From classically creepy mansions whose grounds are stalked by terrifying spirits of the past, to aged plantations now serving as event venues where guests have reported all manner of ghostly encounters. Are you ready to explore some of the most haunted mansions in the United States? Number 5. Allerton Park and Retreat Center. Allerton Park and Retreat Center, located in the Piatt County township of Willow Branch, out of Monticello, Illinois, is a 1,217-acre park, nature, and conference center, whose grounds, which include a manor house, host an average of 100,000 annual visitors. Historically, construction of the manor was started in 1899 and was mostly completed over the following year, and by fall of 1900, though the interior wasn't quite done, one Robert Allerton would move in. From 1901 to 1903, a number of outbuildings, including stables, greenhouses, and a brick wall garden were installed, and by 1914, the property had grown to over 12,000 acres and was known as the Farms. Robert would decorate his property lavishly with flora, statuary, and numerous pieces of art that can still be enjoyed into the present. In 1946, Robert would gift his mansion to the University of Illinois to be used as a place for their studies, and in 2007, the National Park Service would register the site as a National Historic Place. The park remains open to this day, with the mansion also usually open, though it's often rented out for events, both public and private, and across the expanse, a number of ghost stories have been born, with those frequenting its bounds reporting orbs and apparitions captured commonly in photography, inexplicable electronic malfunctions and flickering lights, and doors that open and close on their own. Footsteps are often heard from the empty stairwell, disembodied voices from vacant rooms, and extreme cold spots are felt throughout the park, even on the hottest of days. The most famous legend surrounding Allerton tells of a lady in white sighted drifting the tract, walking near the pond, or, more terrifyingly, within guests' rooms in the middle of the night. This chilling manifestation is theorized to be of either Robert's stepmother or fiancé, who it's rumored spent her final days near. Number 4. Greystone Mansion. Greystone Mansion, also known as the Doheny Mansion, and located off Loma Vista Drive in Beverly Hills, California, is an abode that, at the time of its construction from 1927 to 1930, was supposedly the most expensive installment in the whole of an already fairly expensive state. On February 16th of 1929, just 4 months after Ned Doheny, his wife Lucy, and their 5 children had moved in, Ned was killed in a guest room in a murder-suicide involving his secretary Hugh Plunkett. Following his death, Lucy and the children would remain in the house until 1955, when they would sell their land to Paul Trousdale, who would transform the property into Trousdale Estates, which in turn was sold to Chicago industrialist Henry Crown. In 1963, Crown would launch plans to subdivide the estate and demolish the mansion. However, in 1965, the demolition was halted when Beverly Hills bought the Titan out, and in 1971, the city would reopen the site as a public park. In 1976, Greystone Mansion was added to the National Register of Historic Places, and in addition to hefty funding from the city, local volunteers would launch efforts resulting in the old abode's full restoration. The park and estate remain open to the public, hosting a number of annual events and festivities, and if popular stories hold any water, their fair share of ghostly phenomena. Several informal investigations of Greystone have yielded high EMF levels, chilling EVPs, extreme temperature fluctuations, and both orbs and full-bodied apparitions in the backgrounds of photography, and the ominous ghost of a man in a black suit has been encountered across the expanse. One legend tells that activity on the property is so intense that the city has had trouble hanging on to night watchmen for more than a few months at a time. Ned's murder and Plunkett's subsequent suicide are said to replay within the old home nightly, with stories of gunshots and blood-curdling screams that seem so real, they've resulted in calls to the authorities, who always arrive to find the house completely clear. Lastly, the spirit of Lucy has been sighted and heard, seemingly going about life pleasantly from the other side, likely enjoying a time before her extreme misfortune. Number 3. The historic Stranahan House Museum. The historic Stranahan House Museum, located off Southeast 6th Avenue in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, is a historic home holding the impressive mantle of being one of the oldest surviving structures in the whole of Broward County. Initially, construction of the abode was completed in 1901 for Frank and Ivy Stranahan, with the lower floor serving as a trading post and the upper as a community hall. By 1906, the couple's business had expanded to include a bank and general store, and they would construct additional buildings closer to the railroad, with the old trade post eventually renovated and converted into residential space. As their business continued to grow, so did an associated settlement, and in 1911, the community would incorporate as Fort Lauderdale. Sadly, in 1929, depressed and in ill health, Frank would take his own life by way of drowning himself in the new river in front of his home. Ivy would remain at the abode until her death in 1971, after which the site would be gifted to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and in 1975, it would be sold to the Fort Lauderdale Historical Society. The Stranahan House was open to the public in 1984 and remains so to this day, hosting guided tours, special events, and, according to staff and visitors, a slew of otherworldly infestations, with frequent reports of disembodied voices, footsteps from empty rooms, doors that open and close on their own, and lights that flicker without cause. A popular legend tells that the spirit of Frank remains in the home he so loved in life, supervising its care and chasing away those with ill intent, while Ivy's manifestation has been sighted rounding corners, leaving the scent of old-fashioned perfume in her wake. Several have reported feeling a tender hand rest on their shoulder, an anomaly also attributed to Ivy, playing it shy. Also reported across the old property are orbs and strange mists in photography, run-ins with the spirit of a woman carrying a baby, and encounters with a ghostly Seminole girl holding a candle. Lastly, Ivy's father, Augustus, is said to haunt his old room, and has even thrown books at the unsuspecting, and the manifestation of her brother, Albert, has been known to appear to young female visitors, to flirt for moments before fading into nothingness. Number 2. The Destrehan Plantation. The Destrehan Plantation, located off River Road near Destrehan, Louisiana, is an antebellum mansion boasting the title of being one of the oldest homes in the state, as well as of being the oldest documented home in the lower Mississippi River Valley. Historically, construction of the plantation was started for Robert Antoine Robin de Longny in 1787 and was completed under Spanish rule in 1790. Upon Robert's death in 1792, the property was purchased by his son-in-law, John Noel Destrehan. The Destrehans had a total of 14 children, which would require the addition of 2 semi-detached wings during their ownership. In 1839, Jean Noel's son-in-law, Pierre Adolphe Rost, would purchase the estate, and following his passing in 1868, his wife and son would continue to reside within the home until 1910, when it was sold to the Destrehan Planting and Manufacturing Company, concluding a family ownership that lasted 123 years. In 1914, the plantation was sold to the Mexican Petroleum Company, predecessor of American Oil, during which time it was utilized as an oil refinery until its abandonment in 1959. And in 1971, the property was donated to and fully restored by River Road Historical Society, who continues to maintain the site to this day. In the present, the Destrehan Plantation is open for tours and offers displays on period crafts such as candle making and cooking, alongside a purported mountain of paranormal activity, with both staff and visitors describing unnatural cold spots, the constant feeling of being watched, and eerie shadowy forms that stalk the living. For a period of time, the plantation was owned by Stephen Henderson, husband to Eleanor Destrehan. The couple's marriage lasted until death, which in their case wasn't that far out, as Eleanor died unexpectedly at just 19 years of age, and Stephen just a few years later. While some tales tell it was heartbreak, and others that Eleanor wasn't completely faithful, many have reported encounters with Henderson's full-bodied apparition, always looking distraught or enraged. Another legend tells that Stephen was a good friend of Jean Lafitte and that some of the infamous pirate's treasure was buried or hidden near. A phantom Lafitte has been spied slinking about, seemingly searching for his lost loot that was buried so long ago. Lastly, across plantation grounds, many have told of objects moving on their own, of inexplicable electrical malfunctions, of doors that open and close by themselves, and of encounters with the entity of a woman named Lucy, who was a former mistress of the home, and whose soul, it's said, feels eternal guilt over her treatment of enslaved individuals under her charge. Number 1. The historic Drish House. The historic Drish House, also known as the Dr. John R. Drish House, and located off 17th Street in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, is a historic plantation home widely considered by preservationists to be one of the most distinctive mixes of Greek Revival and Italianate styles the state has to offer. Historically, the mansion was constructed in 1837 for Dr. John R. Drish as the centerpiece to a 450-acre plantation, and prior to the Civil War, it was extensively remodeled, with a 3-story brick tower built in. John would pass on in 1867, with his wife, Sarah, joining him in death in 1884, after which mansion grounds would change hands a number of times, with surrounding lands being subdivided and sold off. Eventually, the aged abode was acquired by the Tuscaloosa Board of Education, who would reopen it as Jemison School in 1906. This school would stay in operation until 1925, when the property was sold to Charles Turner's Tuscaloosa Wrecking Company, and in 1940 it was sold again to the Southside Baptist Church, who would retain ownership until 1995, after which the property would begin to slip into disrepair. In 2012, the old mansion was purchased by Nika McCool of Past Horizons LLC, and in 2016, it was remodeled extensively before being reopened as an event venue. The historic Drish House remains open into the present, standing as a landmark and acting as one of the more popular wedding venues around. Stories of hauntings surrounding this aged residence aren't a new occurrence, and date back to the early 20th century. As legends have it, Dr. Drish's daughter, Catherine, was told she couldn't marry the man that she loved, and was instead married off to a wealthier stranger, who in turn ended up leaving her. It's purported that she went insane, and that the good doctor locked her up in a room with naught but a piano for company. And to date, many have described hearing phantom piano music that drifts across the ground, especially at night. History and legend intertwine to tell that Drish was known for his heavy drinking habits and suffered from a gambling problem, and in 1867, after one too many, he took a topple over the stairway, resulting in his death. His widow, Sarah, saved candles from his funeral, insisting that they someday be used at hers. Unfortunately, upon her passing, the candles couldn't be located, and many claim Sarah's soul remains across the grounds. Angry, her family failed to fulfill her last wish. Passers-by have reported sighting ghostly lights through the windows of the old mansion, as well as firelight on its 3rd floor, that many claim emit from the candles long lost. Taking its fascinating and yet brutally dark history into account, and coupling it with a looming jumble of associated ghost stories and urban legends, we felt the historic Drish House was the perfect choice for this episode's most haunted mansion in the United States. Thanks for joining us for our first list of some of the most haunted mansions in the US. If you enjoyed hearing our history and ghost stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like, and most importantly, share us with anyone you feel deserves a good scare. We'll catch you all next time.